4 automotive enterprises all sharing the same name. And if you know your horsepower, your aftermarket, and most of all, your racing, the name is no stranger to you.
This is more than a chop shop. These are complete engineered vehicles.
Vehicles made amazing by Roush. And on today's rides, we'll watch that empire make a special Mustang. And we'll also meet the man behind the name.
It's safe to say I never saw a Mustang I didn't like.
The cat in the hat is Jack Roush, racer, flyer, daredevil, and dreamer. A man who isn't just living one amazing life. What's amazing is that he's alive to tell us about it today.
I saw a lot of people that looked like you in Vietnam. He said they were all ashen, they were gray. He says they were dead. He said, I thought, sure you were dead.
It's a big life of customizing, racing, and radical Mustangs, all running wild in the world of Roush. And it's starting now, here on Rides. It's the horse with more lives than a cat, spanning the generations. It's the Mustang, and you don't need to know much to know they're bigger than ever. This Stang is going to a place that'll take it from top of the chart to off the chart. It's going to Roush, where it won't just be upgraded, it'll be remade at a factory level by guys who make it look easy, because everything they need is right here.
Roush as a corporation is broken up into 4 divisions. Roush Industries, which is very well known throughout the automotive community for over 20 years as being a Tier 1 engineering service provider, rapid prototype development organization.
They can make prototypes of both tomorrow and today, like this Magnum wagon.
Our second division is Roush Racing, which everybody in the world knows Roush Racing, very successful, over 300 championships. 2-time Winston Cup and Nextel Cup champions. Very successful racing team.
In the world of racing, a name really can't get any bigger than Roush.
Third division is Roush Manufacturing, which is the division that allows us to be able to mold our own parts, design our own parts, paint our own parts, allows us the capabilities of keeping everything in-house.
It's not every world-class race team that has a multi-functioning factory at its disposal. Along with their 4th division, Roush Performance, where they bundle everything here into services for the high-performance enthusiast. Services like upgrading new Mustangs. It's the combination of activity that excites the owner of all this.
And that's one of the things Jack loves about this vertically integrated company that he has, is its full service, total capability, and everything can be reflected in one single product.
The automotive aftermarket is huge, and while this company is part of that, the aftermarket doesn't even begin to describe the scope of this empire, or the man behind it. From racer to manufacturing giant to the owner of winning race teams, these are only a few sides of Jack Roush, and his road to success has been filled with bumps and turns, but never any yield signs.
I'm the kid that never grew up. You know, most people, once they realize a measure of success and get their nose bloodied a few times, and they say, you know, I'm going to go back and get a regular job here and just kind of slow down and put things in perspective.
How's this for perspective? Today, Roush is a leader in automotive engineering, development, parts manufacturing, and motorsports. From factory vehicles to race cars, they can do a one-off or mass produce.
Roush reaches well beyond the traditional aftermarket hot rod manufacturer would go.
For proof of that, it's on to a major project here at Roush, one evolving around one of the hottest cars to hit the street in decades. Many will insist it's a difficult task to make an '05 Mustang cooler. But it is a task made easier when you know that Jack has had a long love affair with the Mustang. And we don't mean any specific Mustang.
And it's safe to say I never saw a Mustang I didn't like.
And Mustangs like Jack, with Ford letting Roush in on the design before the car's release. Prior to the '05's premiere, digital data allowed Roush to build a full-sized clay model. After that, new design pieces emerged. For some here, this model was their first in-person session with an '05.
We had gotten permission to use data from Ford to help build our full-size clay models. So actually the first time that I ever saw a full-size car was in clay.
Clay also built previous Roush Mustangs, and with those stepped-up ponies already on the street, the 05 Roush has weighty traditions to uphold. With distinctive fascias, muscular rocker panels, and bold wheels, Mustang fans know the DNA of a Roush when they see it, so new models need to respect existing versions.
Side exhaust, that was something that was considered DNA for our Roush Mustangs, and we learned that due to the structure on the side of the vehicle, we couldn't have a side exhaust.
But the design of the 05 made it impossible to save all the former DNA. Newly designed hood scoops proved to be another big issue. Because the 05 came with a taller hood than previous models, the designers here at Roush had to make sure their new design wouldn't bring visibility problems. But soon, after a lot of hard work, the situation was labeled "problem solved." So after months of top secret designing, the 05 Roush Mustang was ready for the next stage.
The last thing that we finalized on the clay was the hood scoop. So once that was done, then we brought in and optically scanned the entire vehicle.
The scanning Paul mentions is performed with a sophisticated high-tech system. The clay model will transform into computerized digits thanks to an adjustable electronic eye. It works a bit like the scanner you use with your computer, but this machine works in 3 dimensions. This collection of information is crucial because in the age of digital design, computerized data provides the roadmap to creating parts for the new Roush Mustang. It will also preserve data for future projects, as well as supply stats on everything from hood clearance to wheel height. All stored in that new automotive workshop known as cyberspace. The scanner grabs areas of the car one assigned piece at a time. Those pieces will later come together in the computer, creating a perfect composite of the entire surface. And that Mustang isn't the only Ford in Roush's customizing stable. There's also a built-tough truck, the F-150. That ride can also become a Roushed vehicle, complete with a lot of new gear and a lot of new attitude. And there's the Ford Focus, a popular ride that can also get the Roush treatment.
To make our lineup complete of things we want to help the dealers with, it's not sufficient for us to do a Mustang package. We need to do a F-150 package and a Focus package as well in order to satisfy the needs and interests of that entire generation.
So the shops at Roush are all busy shops, with over 2,000 workers and facilities throughout North America and Europe. And to think it all started with one highly motivated math whiz. Since childhood, the man behind the empire has always been on the move. From Ford engineer, to pro drag racer, to the man behind race teams possessing 24 national championships.
First drag racing championship was huge. The first road racing win was huge. The second NASCAR championship was huge.
Roush puts equal amounts of energy into his race teams and his manufacturing teams. They're teams that make crate engines, auto parts, and prototypes. It didn't get this big overnight or over easy. For Jack Roush, time and time again, it was a roll of the dice.
The thing that has happened, because this business is so unconventional and it's so perilous in terms of performance, is that on more occasions than I could count on my hands, feet, and your hands and feet, and everybody that we could put in this room, I bet the company. And the fact that we survived is the biggest accomplishment that I've had.
He also survived as a racer, one who's not driving in the big events today. But nonetheless, not long ago, Roush was in a situation that makes pro racing look safe by comparison. To say the incident was harrowing would be an understatement, and for Jack, it was a close call that was just too close to even call. The 05 Mustang has once again made this American icon the talk of the car world. That's because for many, it has touches of the '67 Fastback, perhaps the most popular of all Mustangs. And the job of Roush Manufacturing is to raise the bar even higher, from stock Mustang to Roush Mustang. It's an endeavor requiring many divisions here at Roush. Roush means different things to different people. It's racing, it's manufacturing, it's innovation. And in one of their sprawling Michigan-based facilities, we learned that factory-level customizing is only one part of the Roush empire.
We're not just slapping parts on cars here. We're engineering new vehicles that the consumer can enjoy, a blend of virtues that range from braking dynamic to suspension dynamic to styling. So everything from taking the seats out to putting the leather upholstery in, to getting the body parts put on, the wheels, the tires, all the gauge clusters, all the performance trim, that all happens here. And for each car, one guy owns that car.
And this yellow pony car belongs to Roush technician Lee Michael Billing. Lee will see this presently stock Mustang through every step of its custom-made journey. It's a journey beginning with the departure of two soon-to-be reupholstered Mustang buckets.
Okay, now we're gonna take the factory seats out, take them over to the trim shop.
In this place, a trip to the custom trim shop isn't a long trek. If measured, it might add up to about 25 feet away.
As you can see here, we're preparing to do a number of vehicles here today. This is a really high production rate time for Roush Performance.
Factory-level customizing keeps that key word in focus, factory, with the work having to be as perfect as the day the car rolled off the assembly line. Of course, that high level more than applies to the remade seats.
And we have our own area here with each guy at a station where we take and disassemble the factory seat. We put new foam bolstering, and then which provides added bolstering on the bottom. And then we add the two-tone look with the Jack Roush insignia, which really finishes it off. First thing a customer does when they get their car is they get in the car. So the contact points and the attention that you put into the contact points of the vehicle are most important.
Now it's time to really begin pulling this pony apart.
Okay, now I'm gonna start taking some trim off so we can run the fog lamp jumper for the front fascia.
The first major piece off the front fascia is the only part in this area that will be saved, the distinctive grille and fog lights.
Factory ones stay in. When we put the new fascia on, then we'll put the factory grille back on.
Making it Roush is about making this car look ready to break the speed limit.
Could definitely get you a lot of tickets, that's for sure.
Time for badging, and it's almost as important as any aspect of the upgrade. For many, there's no point to this if folks don't know who took this ride to the next level.
There's winglets that go on the quarter panels right here. And this just shows us where to drill our holes so that they fit right.
So as the factory rear spoiler is already forgotten, the new spoiler starts to go on without a hitch. If you're thinking Lee's making this look easy, you're right. But don't forget, he has billions of dollars of equipment and thousands of hours of expertise supporting him. Like the early Mustangs, sail panels will ride directly behind the door windows.
This is our little template for make sure we get our mounting brackets in the same spot every time, make sure all the cars are exactly the same. Put the tape on here. Line up the ears with the edge of the glass. There you go.
The next stages are big stages, as this car loses its factory wheels, its rocker panels, and the rest of its front fascia. It's a lot of work, but it's not going to become a Roush Mustang simply by way of wishful thinking. Like most guys who know their way around a car, Lee's one of those dudes who got into it early, learning as he built and building as he learned, starting in high school.
My junior year in high school is when I started getting into them. I took a vocational class and kind of got hooked on it.
Here's a guy who's been hooked on Mustangs since the day the first one was born. Jack Roush is a pony car junkie who has the collection to prove it. He's loved every year of Mustang, enough to have his own museum featuring that make of car most associated with Roush. It's not everyone who can put his name on the ride he fell in love with back when he was young and mad about cars. But then again, not everyone is Roush. The bond between Mustang and Roush has spanned over many arenas, and it's a team still finding new places to play.
The name Roush has always been associated with racing Ford products, from his drag racing days to his sports car days to obviously the Nextel Cup days. So Jack just thought it'd be a natural progression to get into the kind of premier Ford performance car at the time. And Jack's had Mustangs over the years.
He's had Mustangs, including one of the rare 1964.5 Premier Mustangs. A collector's item that could only belong to a person who's truly in love.
I love Mustangs.
And his Mustang Museum proves that fact. It's a massive collection containing Roush's many victorious racing Mustangs, all standing next to his classic Mustangs. Along the way, you'll also see pace car Mustangs. Not to mention this one that has 850 horsepower, delivering almost 800 foot-pounds of torque, with the power to go 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. But if any machine can give that ride a run for its money, it's this Colossus. And speaking of money, well, it really does speak of money. The cost? $250,000. If you want it running smoothly, you'll need a shop like this, dedicated to just such an engine. But if you think this motor is big, wait until you see the Mustang this powerhouse goes into. New Mustangs undergo factory-level changes here at Roush, the car mecca where they don't just build rides, they also race them. This Mustang's ready for its newly tooled V8. And here it is, getting upgraded and best of all, good and Roushed. Here's another Mustang engine ready for its ride, but this one is a 12-cylinder, 1,650 cubic inch monster named Merlin. It was built by Rolls-Royce, and this engine can really fly. Here's the Mustang that houses Merlin. It's the P-51 Mustang, one of the most effective planes of World War II. So why are we looking at this machine? Well, Jack Roush loves Mustangs so much, he owns and flies 2 of them. He swears he chose neither the car nor the plane based on the name Mustang, but in either case, he knows his stuff.
P-51 was a representation of the glory days of Detroit and of the high water mark for American entrepreneurship.
Roush is a scholar on aircraft, owning this World War II fighter plane as well as his pair of Mustangs. He pilots all these planes, as well as this jet, a necessary mode of transportation that facilitates his very busy work schedule. Returning to one of his Mustangs, there is this coincidence of names, made more interesting when you learn that Jack worked on Ford's factory floor when the first Mustang car came together.
It's a really odd thing, yes, I'd say that. I had nothing to do with naming the car that has the performance characteristics, the cost and the package dimensions of the Mustang. That was done by Lee Iacocca and Ford Motor Company. It just happened to line up with what my interests were, you know, at the time in my life when they decided to make its entry into the marketplace. I had nothing to do with the decision that the English made when they bought the first North American P-51s to call it a Mustang. You know, Americans, for the most part, until they got exposed to the English in World War II, they didn't. A P-40 was not a P-40 Warhawk. A P-38 was not a P-38 Lightning. You know, the English named all their airplanes rather than give them numbers, and the Americans fell into that habit. What we had to do as a country to get ourselves ready to go meet the tyranny and the opposition in World War II was technologically just an impossibility. So the P-51 Mustang was designed in 120 days by guys that were incredibly talented and motivated and had a great desire to have their business survive based on the quality of its product against the other people that would build airplanes for the military. So 120 days they designed this airplane, and it is marvelous.
The P-51 gave the bombers of America's 8th Air Force the fighter cover it needed over occupied Europe, greatly assisting the bombing campaign against Germany in the war. To this day, it's still considered a success on every level of economy, ingenuity, and capability.
So it's fast, it's reliable, it's got all that history.
History by way of success. In 1944, the U.S. Senate called the P-51 the most aerodynamically perfect pursuit plane in existence. And while that might have sounded biased considering the source, the fact is there was worldwide agreement, because 55 other countries bought versions of the P-51 after the war ended. For Roush, old-time stats don't mean as much as current-day numbers, and when it comes to the math on the P-51, the plane's as good today as it was back in its glory years. Jack claims it still flies with the best of them.
I climb in that airplane today, and I can fly from here to the West Coast. I can leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I can be there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's faster than any propeller airplane that's been since. Any propeller-driven or any propeller gasoline-powered airplane that has been built since. So I can go as high as I want. I can fly around weather. I can go as fast as the speed limits allow for the FAA, civilian airplanes. So it's fast. It's reliable. It's got all that history. It has. My heroes are the guys that went out and put their lives on the line to preserve our economy, to preserve our way of life.
So for Roush, it's Mustangs in the air and Mustangs on the track. And in Jack's view, a name is just a name.
The English named the airplane, and Lee Iacocca and the Ford guys named the Mustang, and both those things just happened to fall into my greatest interests, and it's ironic, but I had nothing to do with it.
The Mustang, on 4 wheels without wings. The body of this factory Ford was first built by way of clay, sculpting, and mold work. Mold work like the high-tech stuff that goes on here at Roush. How high-tech? Well, this Mustang now needs its new front fascia, and if it's out of stock, they'll just make another one right here. In fact, they created the piece in a nearby Roush studio. Roush is beyond full service. They design, develop, manufacture, and install, all within the walls of this multi-layered organization. This fascia went from clay work to computer work, and after it was made digital, it was time to make it actual.
The CAD designers focus on the design aspect of it and getting that information ready for the second step, which is the machining end.
Roush has its own state-of-the-art milling machinery. Today's heavy work is all about making molds, pieces that will be used to create parts of a body kit. And when it comes to machining the many molds needed for all the projects here, there's no such thing as a mold they can't come up with.
We machine a variety of different things. We machine injection molds, blow molds, compression molds, castings, and verification models.
Aluminum injection molds are made in this area of the Roush facility. With aluminum being a fast and light material, it's perfect for what machine types refer to as short-run applications. Aluminum injection molds are desired when you're turning out 1,000 pieces from the appliance, rather than a few 100,000.
Depending on the size and shape, an injection mold may be able to be built anywhere from a week's time all the way up to 16 weeks for a fascia tool. Once the machining process is done, it'll go next door to our mold shop where final fit, finish, and assembly will take place.
So we soon find ourselves at the mold shop, where we are looking at what?
We're looking at an aluminum injection mold fascia tool. You can see the line separates the 2 mold halves. What happens with this tool is it gets set into an injection molding machine. Plastic will be injected into this tool, and these 2 halves will open, allowing the part to be removed from the mold.
The mold needs to be moved yet again so it can be pulled apart for a final inspection. Then it will be just about ready for injection time. And even though aluminum is considered to be relatively light, nobody is offering to pick this up by hand. That's because this fascia tool weighs over 60,000 pounds. Heavy stuff, but if it was made of steel, you could add another 40,000 pounds onto the scale. The next step is the 3,300-ton injection molding machine. It's actually more of an enclosed factory within this factory, coming along with a price tag that goes deep into the millions. It's a multi-million-dollar behemoth that will heat and liquefy small high-tech plastic pellets and shoot the compound into the mold.
The injection molding process is all time and temperature and pressure related. So once the press closes and the material gets injected, it's a 4-minute cycle time until the press opens and the part comes out.
In 8 hours, they can make 100 front fascias, enough for a month's worth of Roush Mustangs. And right now, one appliance is formed. The appliance is now about to meet up with yet another robotic presence. It will be a paint procedure continuing the part's movement toward factory precision, keeping this piece as perfect as the rest of the car. There's not much chance this paint rack is just off the rack, having been built especially for these fascias. It's a rack that can talk to a robot.
The robot can't sense where the part is. It'll go to a programmed start point, cycle, and stop point. So it's very important that these racks know exactly where to position the part.
Without this technology, no amount of handcrafting could ever match up with the factory standard of the Mustangs now waiting for these pieces. This paint job has to equal the spraying performed at Ford.
Structurally, this rack is designed to assure that it holds the part to its shape, and that the 180-degree temperature that it's subjected to does not warp the part in any way, shape, or form.
So the shape stays right. As for the shape of matters on today's color wheel, it looks like it's all about red. It's a great-looking shade. But luckily for our Mustang in progress, yesterday was a good long session of Ford factory yellow. And now it's time to get a lot of new gear on a car that's just as new as the gear.
Line up your body lines. Stick it. Line up our holes. Stick it.
As the power tools hum, there's an occasional reminder that this exterior change is quite possibly just the beginning, with a Mustang owner having the option of also tricking out the handling and the horsepower on this car. It's a pair of upgrades that will match the look of a Roush Mustang.
I think it gives it a much lower profile kind of look to it, gives it more of an aggressive look.
It's a look that is now completed by way of Lee's end of the bargain.
And then she's all set. She's ready to go.
Well, not ready to go just yet, because the late word is that this ride is going for the whole package, with handling and horsepower upgrades yet to come. It's going to be a party, with 2 guests arriving, a wandering Ford Focus as well as an F-150, who's looking for some fun. Here at Roush, factory Mustangs are made mightier, and the same goes on with the F-150 as well as the Ford Focus. These vehicles are being taken to that place often referred to as the next level, with new gear all around. At the moment, the approaching gear is all about the next step in this ride's transformation, with the exterior of the car already having been addressed. Now our Mustang is about to get a new take on that all-important element known as handling, with the bulk of the work taking place under the car.
This is factory right here. This comes right from Ford's sway bar. We're going to transfer these links onto the Roush sway bar, and we're going to transfer all the hardware and stuff onto the new Roush stuff. The struts are going to give it a little bit of a stiffer ride. It's not going to bounce as much. The springs are going to lower the height a little bit, help it handle better. And the sway bar is going to assist with handling also.
Much of this changeover is what people want from a Roush upgrade. It's Roush's racing fame that tells drivers these guys know a thing or two about handling. Nearby stands a patiently waiting Mustang GT. And clues tell us that more than a couple GTs have come through here. The leading clue is the removed GT badges, all displayed like notches on a fighting knife. And now it's time to make a big toy even bigger.
This one's gonna get new seats. We're gonna swap out suspension, new front bumper, chin spoiler, rear bumper, hood scoop, badging, normal Roush stuff on every vehicle.
Well, it looks like Chris has his work cut out for him, but he also attacks matters like a pro who's done this 1,000 times before. As we saw in the Mustang changeover, there's not a part or piece that isn't already figured out and created for this upgrade, with factory precision worked into the equation. And that goes for business in the ride, around the ride, and under the ride.
Okay, gotta take the exhaust off right now, zip out the 3 15mm bolts right here, and then undo all the hangers, and then it'll drop right out and slide out.
The longtime bond between Roush and Ford is a multi-layered relationship.
Ford Motor Company makes 1 million F-150s a year. Roush Racing races F-150s in the Craftsman Truck Series. It's a natural fit that Roush would make an F-150 that fans of the F-150 who want something different, a custom truck, could offer at the dealership and buy and drive on the street.
Much of the same can be said regarding the Focus, a ride Darrell puts together Roush style. About 15 to 20 Focuses, Mustangs, and F-150s leave this shop upgraded every day, all as factory solid as when they rolled in.
This is more than a chop shop. These are complete engineered vehicles. All systems have been designed to integrate with one another.
Well, right now it does look like things are moving along quite well. Still, matters will accelerate on both the Focus build and the reconstruction of the F-150. The technicians on these projects had better hurry if they're going to catch up with the work that has already taken place on our Mustang.
Now put it on the truck.
Roush decided to start offering these upgrades just as the entire world of cars and trucks became very demanding about customizing, the practice that sets your vehicle apart from the others out there on the street. Of course, the customizing of these Fords is just one part of what's going on here today at Roush. It's a company that seems to have a stake in almost every major area of the car world today. For Jack Roush, the variety of activity under his banner has roots going back to his father, a master mechanic who is also a jack of all trades, a man who first introduced Jack to a world of machines. Roush's childhood was a place where he would watch and help as trucks came to his father's shop.
Twice or 3 times a year, every one of these trucks had to come down for bearings and for internal work on the engine. And I was standing by to catch the greasy parts when they come off. I got my little fingers burned, and my mother fussed at me because I get my clothes so dirty. But I was enthralled with the fact that that's something you could assemble with pieces, like Tinker Toys or Erector set parts, could go out and move loaded coal or ice or whatever.
It's a lifelong love affair with rides, all kinds of rides for Roush. And even though his operation is both massive and forever sprawling, it's also quite personal and intimate, with the prime example being Jack's area designated for special projects. This is a place where race history can brush up against showroom history. It's Roush's playground that restores, rebuilds, reinvents, or sometimes simply shines up for Jack's collections. Overhead, you might just find the rarest of the rare. And not far from that, there could be any sort of car history you can think of. Of course, what would any Roush shop be without extensive engine work going on? It's a staple that has become a way of life for Roush, a man who does make time for activities. As long as cars or airplanes are involved, it's that reality that has people approaching him with an often asked question.
Did you ever take time off? Rarely. This afternoon, my son and I are going to go fly J3 Cub for a couple hours. Monday I came back from the World 600 in Charlotte, flew my P-51 Mustang back, and then flew for 3 or 4 hours with the Yankee Air Force at Willow Run, flying people around and flying with the bombers and things they have out there. So yeah, my flying, my flying and my old cars and the outings we have with the museum activities and the great race, the days that I can make from that cross-country competition that they have on a road rally format, that's my time. There's no time for fishing. There's no time for golf. I even though I've got a treadmill at home and some free weights at home, I don't spend any time at a club or anything like that. I pretty much have to get ready to go.
He's always been ready to go, even when he was young. Roush was always one of those kids whose gears were constantly turning. He was a student who saw machines as learning tools. Childhood also included math. He was a whiz at numbers. By 1964, he was an engineer for Ford Motor Company. He eventually left Ford to pursue his interest in engine development and motorsports. He would later be a part of every sort of pro racing imaginable, but he started behind the wheel in drag racing. It's a trade that Roush had to walk away from, and he was lucky that he actually could walk away. The event that got him out was an accident that almost took his life.
I would put myself in the car, put my seatbelt on. I'd say, okay, dummy, this is what you want to do. No complaints later. And of course I had to call on that because I did hurt myself from time to time.
He hurt himself enough to get out of the driver's seat when it came to drag racing with a near-fatal crack-up on the racing strip. But there was an event that made an impact in 2002. It was on Jack's 60th birthday when he was doing something that surprised nobody who knows him. He was flying, but this was an experimental aircraft. He was flying to a race in Alabama in a small twin-engine craft with an open cockpit. It was designed as an observation plane. That was probably why Roush was skimming near a pond when he struck unmarked power lines 70 feet above the surface. In murky water, his plane began to sink and Roush was unconscious. A man happened to witness the crash. He also happened to be an ex-Marine trained in underwater rescue. He had a boat he rowed 100 yards to the crash. Larry Hicks got down into the water, but he found nobody, so he quickly went back down again.
Just as he's coming up the second time, running out of air, his hand brushes the back of my head. I'm off to one side of the seat. I'm out of the seat, kind of, and so he realizes that I'm in the seat.
Larry Hicks got Roush out of the water and up on dry land. But to his rescuer and to everyone else who had gathered by then, it looked as though it was all over for Jack Roush. To this day, Jack remembers Larry's words.
He says, you know, I saw a lot of people that looked like you in Vietnam. He said they were all ashen, they were gray. He says they were dead. He said, I thought, sure you were dead. I didn't think. He said, I told him you're not breathing. He said, when I got you up, the emergency people were close by. I said, he's gone.
He was gone until Larry applied a sharp rap to Jack's chest, popping Roush back into consciousness.
I owe the opportunity to sit here and visit with you, the 2 championships I've got, the chance I've got to tell my new grandbaby's stories and the things that will follow. I owe all that the Marine Corps and the fact that Larry Hicks was there for me the day when I needed him most.
He's a self-made individual in charge of an automotive empire. He's a businessman, a daredevil, a family man, and a grandfather. For Jack Roush, life isn't merely a series of twists and turns. Right now, it's a great and fortunate bonus. Jack Roush has his name on an automotive empire. He has shops that design, shops that make parts, and shops that build. But many would say there are some shops there that truly embody the core of Roush. It's those shops that build engines. Racing enthusiasts and speed demons have been wise to one fact for a very long time. A big part of Roush is all about building powerful, high-performance engines. And in that market, Jack Roush got his big break back when Ford made one very big decision.
When Ford Motor Company decided to stop racing in the early 70s, they burned all the parts books. Anybody that had any contact with performance or with racing, they assigned to Outer Mongolia or Siberia someplace. They were all gone, but they remembered me.
It was in that era when Ford focused on the non-enthusiast. As that went on, Jack Roush picked up the high-performance slack and became the go-to guy if you were into Fords and you were racing, a sport where drivers still needed parts, repairs, innovation, and in many ways, a home. So you could say, back when Ford stepped out of racing, Jack Roush stepped up.
There wasn't anybody to support the enthusiasts for Ford still had in motorsports. And so it all fell into my lap.
Ford got back into racing years later, and when they did, they turned to Jack Roush.
We were right there, up to speed and ready to go when it came back.
Ford and Roush have been a winning team, and 24 national championships says that loudly and clearly. Cars don't need to be ancient to contain history. Sometimes, even a recent car will come with a history of its own.
Okay, this is the first Roush Stage 3 Mustang that we built in '94. It had a cowl induction system on it. Notice the cowl is much higher on the hood here for the airflow to flow in. The engine developed approximately 75, 80 horsepower more than the production engine did at the time. We upgraded the brakes to larger Elcon brakes with ventilated rotors. There was a host of interior work done in the car, including the placard showing that it's the first Roush Stage 3 built. This is the next generation body style that Ford came out with. And this particular one happens to be an 01, and it was the fourth 01 that we produced for that particular year. This setup is intercooled, runs approximately 8 psi of boost, and as I said, develops 360 horsepower. It has the same type of features we saw in the other one, with larger wheels, brakes, lower suspension ride height, and the side exit exhaust again. We've done a lot with the styling on the car to make it more aerodynamic, more race-orientated. The motto of these is somewhere between a race car and a road car.
As time goes on, every step within the ongoing evolution of the Roush Mustang will be the obsession of collectors and enthusiasts alike. And that's why it's all being kept and preserved right now. Because today's new upgraded ride can easily end up being tomorrow's sought-after classic. The 05 Mustangs come with state-of-the-art engines that have taken Ford years to design, build, and perfect. But if you're one of those high-end, high-performance heads, it's clear that you're always going to want that extra bit of charge, power, and excitement. As the engineers and designers here at Roush upgrade that Ford engine, they use color codes on their computers to keep track of the old and the new.
Everything shown in yellow on the base engine is what we carried over, including the throttle body, not its position, but we used the actual component. Same thing for the alternator. We repositioned the alternator, but it's the same component. It's a clutch drive. And then everything else in green is new parts for the Roush Mustang. Basically, all that is intake. Air induction, we also added intercooler system. We have a degas bottle here, and our intercooler radiator is right behind the whale mouth of the front fascia here. We routed all the coolant lines and things for the intercooler, which is located right underneath the supercharger, all behind and underneath through the valley of the engine to keep a nice clean package.
There's also a set of power upgrades for the F-150, with an engine compartment that has more room to play with. But right now, that truck will have to take a back seat because our project of the moment is Stage 3 of our 05 Mustang.
This is the 4.6 3-valve engine that's in the current 05 Mustang, brand new engine for Ford. This is our supercharger manifold that we've designed. This is the first one that we've machined. This is our mock-up engine where we're testing out all these parts to check fit.
With the new engine from Ford comes new development and testing here at Roush. But before there can be testing, there needs to be new gear on this engine. Once there is, it'll be going to the dyno. The engine dynamometer is where the guys here at Roush put their new system through the paces. It's where every bit of this project is gauged to see if those new Roush additions really do supply their promised power. Dyno technician Chris Tackett explains his job working with powertrain engineer Sean Clay.
Set up and test these engines and hope he doesn't blow them up.
Well, only time will tell as Chris sets up his computerized floor plan.
You look at it this way, this is sort of like an accelerator and a brake. You're holding your foot on the brake at to maintain a specific speed, and you're giving it more and more throttle with the accelerator until you pill out. In the old days, that's what we call it, pilling out. It's burning rubber.
Time to burn rubber, even though there's no rubber attached at the moment, with the engine on its own in its grueling and rigorous final exam.
$1662 on the exhaust. She's getting warm.
Many RPMs later, the story is up there on the dyno's computer system.
We're at $6 grand. You richen her up?
Yes, idle.
Pardon me?
But idle.
Okay.
The Ford engine is a 4.6-liter aluminum V8 that cranked out 300 horsepower. Now, it's been supercharged and tweaked big thanks to Roush, with their dyno making it a simpler task when it comes to gauging the differences.
It's a lot easier if you start here than trying to do it all in the vehicle.
Getting back to the Mustangs here that are at Stage 2, at least they're not pre-Stage 1, like all these waiting pony cars. Rides eager to have their turn in the busy and transforming shops of Roush.
We're going to take the factory rotors and calipers off, and we're going to replace them with the Roush upgraded cross-drilled rotors and 4-piston calipers.
Stage 2 continues here with handling being upgraded, and our yellow Mustang is about to get some extra stopping power.
Yeah, look at the size difference here. It's a big difference right there.
This Mustang will soon have all of its Stage 2 applications addressed. Of course, it's already received its Stage 1 appearance package. Later, it will be in line for that supercharger and engine combo. And after that, well, this yellow car will then be bouncing on down the road thanks to some very upgraded spring work.
Okay, now I'll get the sway bar. We'll put the sway bar on.
This sway bar will keep the car level, especially at high speeds during sharp turns. It also smooths bumps, particularly handy when one side is experiencing rough terrain that the other side is escaping. The other two Fords are also nearby, and from the looks of things, it's wheel time and it's tire time. Probably the biggest and most popular symbols of stepping your ride up and going for a new look. It's a symphony starring lug nuts, air wrenches, black rubber, and chrome. With the wheels going on and the rides about to roll, they'll be heading out to get a look at some of the completed Roush packages. Vehicles that have been through all 3 stages and are ready for life in the fast lane. In 1964, Ford did 2 things. They hired a math whiz named Jack Roush, and they introduced the Mustang to the world. And since then, the pony has been a big part of Jack's life in more ways than one.
Still got our accumulator hydraulic pressure, 400 pounds. That's what we need there.
So as the boys back at Roush put the final wraps on an entire stable of Roush Mustangs, Jack gets his P51 Mustang prepped for flight.
Flap actuators, the gear actuators are not cracked. Of course, we got bomb racks. I don't know if you noticed the bomb racks on this, but we got bomb racks. We can carry large gas tanks, 120-gallon gas tanks if we want to. If we want to stay in the air for 10 hours, we could do that, and we can carry 500-pound bombs. That's also a possibility. Or 500-pound watermelons.
Whenever I finish a race, there's always something bad happen, you know, with having from 2 to 5 entrants for every race we go to. 2 for the trucks and sometimes 2 for the bush, and always 5 for the cup. Whenever I finish a race, there's always enough stuff going wrong that I just couldn't sleep. I get my airplane, I'm able to manage the airplane, I'm able to manage the airspace, deal with the regulations. I have to manage the weather, and I have to manage the pilot's physiology. And I can go do a 2-hour flight, and it would be as good as sitting down and watching a movie on my couch. You know, because now I'm released from it a little bit. I've done something that regrounds me back to earth, you know.
It's a big day here as these Roush Mustangs are going out to meet the first of the Stage 3s. And Jack is going airborne to unwind. Roush has been upgrading these stock ponies for years. And now it's time to introduce the newest of the Roush Mustangs, Stage 3 style. Here's a word of advice. Keep your eyes open. Who knows when a Roush Mustang, an F-150, or a Ford Focus is going to fly by you on the highway. And if you're lucky, a small World War II fighter may be flying above you at 35,000 feet. Piloted by a guy who is truly driven.
I had no clue that I would have the involvement with the great people and so many people, and have met so many challenges and been able to do all these things that I've been able to do, and to share all the things I've been able to share. As an 11-year-old back in Manchester, Ohio, I remember having the thought, looking around, says, you know, I am going to have the most boring life. My mother had 7 brother-in-laws, and the brother-in-laws always had these interesting stories that would just keep me spellbound whenever I'd sit down and talk about. They'd talk about their wars. They were in Korea as well as in World War II. They'd talk about their wars. They'd talk about their business pursuits. They'd talk about their fishing and their gaming pursuits. They were fishermen and hunters. And I said, I will never have anything that I could ever tell my grandkids. And would you believe it, I'm 63 years old and I just had my first grandkid. So I've got all these stories, and now I've had to wait till almost too long to even have a chance to relate them to somebody that would be really important to me.
Thanks to that favorite old headwear of his, Jack's nickname is the Cat in the Hat. But for this cat, it's anything but old hat. Early in his career, he was there at Ford when the first Mustang was born. Little did he know where both that young engineer and that pony would end up decades later.
It's on the day of a Mustang lover, you know? Super.